live. I want to see if people start rolling in. See if you get any comments on your end that they can hear us okay.
I will. I'll keep an eye here as well.
Cool. So, welcome to another Crypto Convos, guys. I've got Alex from Nuggets News on. First time I'm chatting with him, so this is pretty exciting. Thanks for coming on.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
So, yeah, I mean, what do you want to go over today? I guess giving me some background information about how you initially got into the space and how you ended up where you are now is always a good starting point.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I guess my journey started actually back in the financial crisis when I'd been doing a bit of investing and lost a lot of money, like most people. And I sort of asked my parents, "Do you still have to pay your stockbroker when your stocks all crash 50% and your money manager?" And they said, "Yeah." And I thought, "Geez, that's a pretty easy job." So I wanted to learn about the world of stocks and money and all that. And that took me down the rabbit hole. Like most people know, you start to watch all the documentaries and learn about gold and debt and everything. And then I read an article about Bitcoin in 2012 on Zero Hedge, and I thought, wow, everything in our world is digital and instant apart from money. And although I've been a bit of a gold and silver bug before that, but I really got fixated on Bitcoin. And Bitcoin really had a pretty big appearance in Australia, even in 2013. And then obviously we had that long crypto winter of 2014 and 15. And then things really started to get exciting again when Ethereum came along and showed that you could do more than just money. You could do sort of programmable blockchain. And then in 2017, as you know, the bull market started and we had people asking us a lot of questions. So we'd always done education for friends and family and a few small little Facebook groups we had at the time. But then it just took off in Australia and there was, overnight, there was tens of thousands of people stampeding into the exchanges and into the Facebook groups. And I guess the rest is history.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely think I like the fact that you were like, oh, that seems like a pretty easy job. I have no background in stocks or anything like that. I just really kind of got involved by accident. I feel like I've told the story like 1,000 times, but basically somebody owed me money. They paid me back a Bitcoin and I kind of fell down the rabbit hole pretty much from there. I had never heard about it, knew nothing at all. It was completely brand new. I mean, he had to walk me through how to set up a Coinbase Bitcoin wallet because I had no idea what it was. So that was a pretty interesting happening, I guess, within itself.
And what kept you down the rabbit hole? What did you find most interesting once you started to read about money and all that sort of thing?
I guess just the limitless ability of the technology and kind of all the different projects and all like the innovation. Okay, so this person didn't like this project, so they forked it and made something else. I just thought it was very cool that there was evolution of all of this different tech. And it was pretty much, if you can think it, you can make it. And that seems to be, the way the space is. And that was really something that was interesting for me. And then the other thing is that the community, in the beginning at least, when I started, was very, very nice and very receptive. And I learned a lot from that. So I was, I'm pretty grateful for that.
Yeah. Is this still working all right on your end? I'm just looking at it now. It still says waiting on YouTube. That's all. Are we definitely live?
Yeah. Yeah. It's showing live on my channel, but you're right. On my live events, it's not showing us streaming, which is strange, but I see chats. Hold on a second.
Oh, here we go. I think it's got two different videos. That's right. There's 18 people watching. So,
oh, okay.
Hey, Glenn. Hey, Will. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Good red candle going on right now. So that's probably something we should touch on.
Yeah.
Tether.
You actually saw the article. So if you want to just like lead in.
Yeah. So from what I read, there was the block who do some great research found that there was moving of funds or one bank that had frozen funds in it to the tune of $700 or $800 million. And so Bitfinex drew on their reserves, their Tether reserves that should be there backing the Tether 1-for-1. And whether or not that was just a temporary thing because one bank account was frozen, or whether or not that's all gone and now they're missing $800 million out of a market cap of, I think, around $3 billion for Tether at the moment. So I want to read more about it, but the market's certainly fallen off a cliff. And it's funny that these things tend to happen at the right ideal time, isn't it?
Yeah. I know you were just saying that. You're like, oh, right before we're going live, news is breaking now about Tether. I did a video quite a while back on sort of the fear or the issues around stablecoins, and like you said, before we went live, you'd said, well, they're just moving money. They're not necessarily, it's not necessarily fraudulent money, so there may not be anything to be super worried about. But the fact that they had to move, money from one bank account to another, it's kind of concerning though that they didn't have the existing funds, or that they're not managing their funds well enough to have to not do something like that.
Yeah, and I guess I've been trading on Bitfinex for I think 5 years now, and every year there's been a drama or a story or something happens. So every time I hear something, I'm a little bit like, oh, is this just the latest round of FUD? Because they've survived so many market cycles up and down. And if they had have been running fractional reserves or a poor system, they probably would have been found out by now, I think. But the fact that they just struggle with banks, and we know that crypto businesses struggle with banks, and particularly when they're dealing with such large amounts, I kind of think that's the bottleneck in the issue rather than the team themselves being fraudulent. But hey, we might find out differently.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry, I can't multitask reading a comment and also trying to talk. Yeah, no, I just, ultimately, I hope that this isn't a catastrophic event or whatever. I used to trade on Bitfinex as well, way back in the day when I thought I was going to learn how to trade. And you're right, there has been a lot of FUD around that whole concept, because they are Tether is their main source or their main stable coin, right?
Yeah, well, I think they've adopted a couple of other stablecoins now. That's probably something else we should mention, that there's so many US dollar stablecoins now. And we know the decentralized ones like Maker are capturing market share off Tether. So it's probably better or less bad that it happens now when there's all these other options than if it happened a year or two ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what other projects you've been researching recently,
Well,
or what do you like about researching projects when you find a hidden gem and that sort of thing?
okay, so what I like about researching projects, I think, is the fact that it's one of those things that I can, this may sound silly, but do at my own pace. I spent a lot of time in school, and it was always researching things I didn't necessarily like, or stuff that I didn't actually really want to learn about, but I had to. And I liked the fact that, there's all these new projects always coming out. There's all this new technology that's always evolving, and I have the opportunity to sit down and read about something I actually am interested in. And it took me a long time to get accustomed to white papers because they are so technical, and obviously I don't really have a tech background.
Yeah.
But I like the idea that you may never know, right? You can open up a white paper and you may have an idea of what you're going to read about, but you never know until you get into it. And it could be something really, really cool that you feel like investing in, or it could be something that maybe you're like, okay, well, I'm dodging a bullet here. What about you?
Yeah. I guess you're always learning something different. And with my portfolio, I try to find things that are in different industries so that if they disrupt that industry, they just capture a bit of market share from that field. So we can be reading a white paper about an energy project, and you learn so much about how that industry works, and then logistics. And there's so many different industries that are being disrupted now, or trying to be disrupted by blockchain. So I think that's what I find exciting when people say, how long does it take to research a video? Or if it's just about a privacy coin and you kind of have all the basics of how crypto works, it probably takes a few hours, versus if there's a new project in a new industry you don't know much about, it can really take a few days before you can produce a good video, I guess.
Yeah, it also depends on how much time you have to dedicate to this kind of stuff, right? So for me, like I'm at work 40 hours a week, so I don't have all of the time in the world. Sometimes researching a simpler project, like for example, like when I did a video on Ravencoin, I was like, okay, I understand the concept. It's got a couple extras that I really enjoyed learning about, but it wasn't an overwhelming project. So sometimes I prefer, although this may sound like maybe me being lazy, but it's not. I prefer looking for stuff that's a little bit easier, because to me that's more enjoyable, because I feel like I can really wrap my head around it. The projects that are seriously very heavy and very technical, it's almost like not disinteresting to me, but it's more difficult and requires more time. And so because of that, I like stuff that's maybe a little bit easier to understand, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you think about Ravencoin, because that was sort of on my to-do list, and then it got way too overhyped, and I thought, oh, what's this thing that's being shilled by everyone? But then I looked at it and thought, oh, they're using something pretty similar to Bitcoin and just a basic ledger for security tokens, which is a good concept. Sometimes it's good to keep it simple. So what do you think about it?
I like anything that tokenizes assets. I think that we need to find the best way to do that. There's a lot of projects, obviously, that are kind of in that scope. But as you mentioned, the fact that they use sort of the bones of Bitcoin for that project makes it easier. Definitely makes it, the tech-wise, makes it safer because it's proof of work, right? So I like the concept behind it. I don't remember too much about the technicals, obviously, because I had covered it quite a while ago. But I remember I had the same feeling. I was like, oh, okay, well, this is so hyped. I don't know if I really want to cover it because I don't want to be that person that's covering projects when they're popular. But then I had a genuine interest in it. So I was like, all right, whatever, I'm just going to do it anyways.
Yeah, I think you said something really interesting there about proof of work, because I think this year we've already seen like a 51% attack on Ethereum Classic, and I think people are going to really come to terms with how important proof of work is. So you have chains like Komodo, and I think Elastos is just sort of piggybacking, you can call it, off of Bitcoin security. And I think we're really going to see a lot of 51% attacks this year on the smaller hash rate coins.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, if there's a will, there's a way. People will do those things if given the opportunity. If the opportunity is there, it's going to be taken advantage of. And I'm kind of like, I guess, hit or miss on proof of work. Yes, I know it's definitely more secure, but I also think for longevity wise, we need to find a more efficient way to go about sustaining that, because I just don't know if the way that we're doing it right now is realistic for long-term uses.
Yeah, I think we're growing in the renewable space in terms of where we get our energy from faster than a lot of other industries or countries. But then the other day in Australia, we see that they're setting up a Bitcoin mining plant next to like a coal power plant because all the base load power is going to waste. So when I read stuff like coal power plant in Australia, I kind of get a little bit cringe. But I'd love to see crypto be the first industry to go 100% renewable, and then you can kind of take away that energy wasting argument.
Yeah, it's actually, and you're 100% right. And I do think that that maybe, or at least I'm hoping that evolution is something that will come about. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I actually have solar panels on my house, and my mother had them installed. And I thought there was a point in time where I was like, I'm going to mine Bitcoin, but obviously I learned my lesson pretty quickly. But I thought, I'm like, oh, well, I have solar panels, so maybe that will help. And then I'm like, well, that's probably still not going to be the most efficient thing for me to do with my time or my electricity bill.
Yeah, I read about a little a box you can buy. So it's a bit like, have you heard of the Casa nodes for the Lightning Network? It's just kind of like a little box you can plug in, and it'll set it up for you. Because I'm the same. I'm not technical enough to set up and run a Bitcoin node from scratch. So you can buy these boxes. I think it was pretty expensive, like $400 or $500, but it'll mine any coin for you. So if you do have a solar setup and whatnot, you can just plug that in and it'll mine Bitcoin for you. So that's something that I'm interested in, but they weren't even available yet. It was pre-order only, and I think it was called CoinMine, but I'd have to look it up again.
I think somebody actually sent me a picture of, or like a link to it. It was like, what do you think? And I didn't have enough time to go over, but it sounds familiar. And that's pretty neat, actually, as far as like, if it's really plug and play, that's something I might have to look into, because then I'll feel like I'm contributing.
Yeah, talk about decentralization. If we have 1 million people plug in a little node and help support the network, then that'll be awesome. Yeah.
Yes, that would be pretty awesome.
I'm reading through the questions as well to see if we've got any good ones coming in.
Yes, people were asking about the Bitcoin drop and Tether and stuff, because obviously we already went over that.
Yeah. I guess the other thing I'd say to the guys was, I just went to the EdCon conference in Sydney, which is all about Ethereum and scaling. So that was super interesting to me. Someone that's followed Ethereum closely for a long time, I still wasn't aware that there was lots of little teams working on the different scaling solutions with their own implementation. So it's actually sort of 2 or 3 Lightning networks and 2 and 3 Plasma. And then a lot of teams working on how can we do the sharding and stuff. So I think Ethereum is going to scale in the next 2 years, we'll probably say. But I think the first sort of improvements are going to be online in the next couple of months, they're talking about, which is really cool to hear.
That's really awesome to hear. Ethereum's I think that most people, when they get into crypto, they kind of partner with one project that they become very passionate about. And I don't follow the tech closely, but when I first got into this space, Ethereum was $17, and it was one of my first non-Bitcoin purchases. And so watching it grow and change, and then all of the different FUD and everything that's happened in the last 2 years with it has been very, very interesting. I mean, to see it at 17 and then see it at 1,000 was really pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Well, I actually missed out, because back in the day, a lot of other coins were shit coins and just copycats. And so when Ethereum came along, if you're reading on the Bitcoin Reddit, everyone was just bashing it, saying this is another shit coin. So I missed out on buying it at, say, 20 cents or 50 cents. And then about a year later, so still pretty early, but we actually have to do your own research, as they say, and realize that there was still that tribalism early on, and now we see it against the other coins. So I'm really excited about EOS and Cardano and these other projects that are trying different things, and I own a little bit of those as well. But I still see this tribalism of it's as if you can only own one platform.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand that as humans, I think that might be innate, but I think it's pretty silly because I've always said Bitcoin's going to exist and Bitcoin's going to do the job that it was set out to do. But just because Bitcoin exists doesn't mean that other projects can't also exist or coexist and do their own. And it doesn't diminish what Bitcoin's doing. And I think the same goes for Ethereum and those other projects. And I'm a big Cardano fan. And so I think that there is a place for most of these projects. Yes, of course, there's shitcoins out there that aren't going to see the light of day, or at least hopefully don't. But we also have to keep an open mind about market share, right? I mean,
yeah, and I guess I'd want to ask you, what's it like as well being female? Because it's even worse when everything gets, aggressive online and whatnot, and it's such a male-dominated industry. And if you actually read studies, females tend to be better investors because they don't go down that path. And they tend to be more rational, which is something that's very necessary, I think, in the crypto space.
Yeah, I think, well, for the most part, I've had this conversation with people before in the past because they ask me, well, why'd you get into it? Why do you like it? Why'd you stay? And the major reason for me is that I found that I used to play video games. I used to do a lot of, I had a lot of different hobbies, and I found that there was a lot more emphasis on gender in those things. And I've seen significantly less in the crypto space. Online, separate from crypto, yes, of course, there's always going to be like trolls and whatnot, but even on like Reddit or any forums or Bitcoin talk, it's like if people don't care what your gender is or what your religion is or whatever is, they're more interested in telling you that your project's a shitcoin and this is why, and that's okay because that's level playing field for everybody. So in my experience, I actually haven't really received much kind of kickback or negative comments for being a female or unnecessary comments.
I think it's so necessary to get to mass adoption that we do include those people. And I'm a pharmacist from that background. And one of the things bits of research that we had was that females do spend a lot of the disposable income because they're taking the kids shopping, they're buying the clothes and all that sort of thing. So if we want crypto to be the currency that everyone spends, we have to get it in the hands of the other half of the population, I think.
Yeah, I have to agree there. And I know some females that are definitely dabbling or interested or have talked to me about it, but predominantly, I mean, as you said it before, that the space is mostly male dominated.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess what has having a YouTube channel taught you? I'm always interested about why people make content, how they do it, why they continue to do it.
Yeah, so the first video was just when we were overwhelmed with people saying, how do you buy Bitcoin in Australia? So we did that. And then it led to just explaining other things, I guess, because there's so much to learn when you go into this world. I guess, so we made the decision not to do any paid reviews, and that's good for some reasons and bad for others. But just there's always people that don't like your video. No matter what you do, you're never going to get a video that's 100% likes. And there's people out there that troll you. There's people out there that loved your channel until you covered another coin that they don't like. And then all of a sudden they'll troll you. And the Bitcoin Cash thing was funny because we had a lot of people that were giving us grief. And there's actually a big Bitcoin Cash community in Australia. So when it was clear that I liked Bitcoin more than Bitcoin Cash, they started giving us a pretty hard time. And then the Bitcoin Cash guys forked, and now these trolls are giving each other a hard time. So it's just funny to watch all these dynamics of personalities and the law of large numbers. Once you get to a certain size, there's going to be people out there that don't like what you do but still follow you anyway.
Yeah, well, they're going to follow you just so they can make sure that they tell you that they don't like you, right?
Yeah. But I guess responsibility is the bigger you grow, even if you like a project, and no matter how much you say do your own research, some people will blindly invest, and then if it goes bad, they blame you and all that sort of thing. So really being aware that you've got a lot of responsibility once you get a lot of followers.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'd have to, I'd say that our things that we've learned align pretty closely. Mine is definitely take things with a grain of salt, to understand that you're not going to please everybody all the time. And then also, responsibility, which is, even with my disclaimer in the beginning of my videos, I know that people are going to make decisions probably based on the videos we make. So we always have to be aware. And I do sponsored content, but I've always been, even before that whole uproar with all the YouTube content creators when people were freaking out that they needed to disclose that they had been doing or taking payment. I was disclosing from the day I started the channel. So I was like, all right, well, I'm in the clear. I don't have to worry about that.
And are you from like a big city or like a more rural part, or whereabouts do you?
So I'm about 2 hours out of New York City. So I'm not in New York, but I'm quite close.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so another thing I found was dealing with all these tech startups. It was just different from like my background where I grew up, and all of a sudden, what you learn is that everyone's really nice to you for a reason because they want you to
Sure.
join their group or shill their product or something. And that's probably something that I wasn't really used to, being from a pretty quiet sort of country background.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, like I said, close to New York, so I'm usually pretty good with people trying to get their way or make a point or be a little
Yeah.
boisterous. So I've been pretty good
So
with
what
that.
what do you think about the market at the moment? And if you've been in crypto for a while, I guess you've seen a few of these cycles. So what do you think we're at? Are we in crypto spring yet?
I think that that's kind of two answers, I think, to this question. I think that the market is moving in a positive way, and I do feel just off of checking my app every day, my Delta app, that I'm seeing more green more consistently for sure in the last, like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months than we have in a long time. I
Yeah.
also think that the sentiment around the people that are in this space is obviously very much connected to pricing. And I've noticed, if nothing else, because I don't follow prices closely, I've noticed a crypto spring in sentiment from the community, meaning like people are more happy, more proactive, more positive. There's more people talking about investing in things and less sort of like negative comments and I've lost my money or I hate crypto or whatever it might be. There's a lot less negativity. And I think that in itself is a shift. So I would have to say that I'd say we're moving out of the bear market, but I am scared to say maybe necessarily a full on spring yet, because it just, we still have time, I think.
Oh yeah, I think we're most likely to chop around sideways for a while. I actually don't think we're going to make new lows for altcoins, because the good altcoins have gone up a couple 100% from their
Hmm.
lows. Like Binance Coin, 500%. I think the bad coins are probably always going to drift lower. That was always the plan. But maybe for Bitcoin, particularly when we have a day like this or another bit of bad news, it's going to hit everything pretty hard. Bitcoin's only sort of 30 or 40% off its lows, maybe a little bit more, but a lot closer than altcoins.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I still think that altcoins, unfortunately, are coupled with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's price obviously affects kind of everything else. And speaking of like altcoins having all-time highs, or not all-time highs, but moving up large percentages, BAT was up like 200 or 300%, I think, right, from its low.
BAT was, did you say?
Yeah, BAT, basic attention token. I think it was up some crazy amount as of like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I forget what the news was that
I think
promoted
it's
that.
just the fact that they've incorporated the ads,
Yeah.
as we were talking about in the pre-interview, and that's so awesome. We actually get a decent amount of revenue, so it's only a couple $100 a month, but that's starting to get up there to compete with your
Hmm.
YouTube earnings, because YouTube pays you so little comparatively.
Yeah, as you said, we were talking about that beforehand, but for the viewers, what I've noticed, I mean, I'm a big lover of BAT and the Brave browser. I think most people know that. But what I've noticed is that the contributions for people that donate BAT to me monthly is actually really has surpassed my Patreon, which is not surprising because obviously most people in this space would like to contribute or donate with crypto, so that makes the most sense. But I'm impressed by, I guess, the user activity on the platform. I know that they had a good user base. I guess I just didn't realize that it was that much, or that many people were actually actively using it on a daily basis. So that's impressive and also promising.
Yeah, yeah. And someone's just got a question about using crypto. When can you use crypto at the local servo, which is
Oh yeah.
service station or a gas station, I think you call them in America. But guys, I was thinking about this the other day. I've got 4 cards now. So, like your 10x card, your Bitcoin card, CoinJar. So you can already spend crypto at any place that accepts any card. And then we've got our, have you heard of Living Room of Satoshi, which lets you pay all your bills online in Australia?
No.
So so that's been around for 4 years, and they won Best Startup Business in 2015. And they let you pay any of your bills or bank deposits with, I think it's like 14 different coins now.
Oh wow, that's
So,
awesome.
so mass adoption is already here in Australia in terms of what you can do, and now it's just up to getting people to use it.
Yeah, no. Yes, getting people to use it and making it easy. I think there's still a lot of barriers as far as people just being simply intimidated by the tasks or the way it looks. I mean, even, like a Bitcoin address in itself is intimidating for the average person to be like, okay, so what am I supposed to memorize this? Like, yeah,
Yeah. And if we live in Australia or America, let's be honest, card payments are still pretty easy. It's these other countries where I see the huge opportunity. Some of them that don't even have the banking infrastructure where Bitcoin's going to boom, and the local Bitcoin's volumes are already picking up in a lot of those, African countries, developing countries, and
yeah.
so on.
Yeah, well, that's, and also projects like Cardano, which are trying to bring banking to the unbanked. Ideally, it will take off in those countries.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the Bitcoin chart, and it's not too bad, is it? There's a $500 sort of a 10% dump. If Tether was really about to implode, I would have expected it to probably do more than that. But I don't know. What do you guys think at home? And a lot of the stable coins are dropping. So someone was asking about DAI, and it's down to 94 cents. So I'm just wondering if there's a scramble towards other coins or out of all coins with a bit of a panic. But
Maybe.
never a dull day in crypto, that's for sure.
Yes, no, never a dull day. At least news wise too. I mean, even if the price isn't doing something, there's always news that's that's interesting.
Yeah. What do you think are the biggest news things that have shocked you? Last year we had China banning exchanges and ICOs, and everyone thought the crypto world was dying. And then a few weeks later, we sort of bounced back. And
Yeah, so if I'm being completely honest, I'm not really much up on the news as of lately. When you had messaged me about the exchange offerings, though, that was something that I didn't know too much about, so I did a little research on it. I'm pretty interested in the fact that it can't be regulated, or it can't be, what is it, by the US, because people can just engage with the actual exchange instead of needing to buy from a project.
yeah, so I think Binance are really playing in a gray area here, and that could actually be their downfall in the
Hmm.
future. But the fact that you've KYC'd on an exchange, they're based in Malta, then Binance is saying that the projects that they're working with are all utility tokens, so they're trying to stay away from what they think are securities. So there's a lot of aspects of this that I think could change in the future, but I really think it's an attempt to garner that ICO hype. And it was a good idea by Binance, and they had some pretty good projects that have performed well. But now we see every exchange has got their own launch pad.
Hmm.
They're doing one or two of these a week. Guys, there's not 10 good projects a week out there for the foreseeable future. Like, this is going to crash and burn just like the ICOs did. And the other thing I'm sort of wary of is how small a percent of tokens they're selling. So, like an ICO, you'd look about 50% of the tokens was pretty standard. These guys are selling like 5 or 10% of the supply, and then the rest is coming into circulation for the next year or two or whatnot. But I still don't think people realize that when they're throwing $5 million, or another project raised $100 million the other day. These are just crazy valuations. And I think we haven't really learned our lesson from the ICO boom.
Yeah, no, I mean, we definitely haven't learned our lesson, and that's interesting. I didn't know that they were only selling such a small portion of the tokens. I do like the idea that Binance doesn't want to ruin their reputation on a crappy project, so they're going to ultimately, or hopefully, vet the project quite well before putting it on Launchpad. But then, now that there's other exchanges doing it, that's not to say that the other exchanges care as much about their reputation. So they may have kind of started something that could take on a life of its own, which could be a little worrisome.
Yeah, because I think ICOs themselves were a brilliant idea, and it worked really well in the early days in 2016. There was awesome projects coming out, and then all the scammers and the get rich quickers got involved. So
Mhm.
I think all this regulation is actually overkill. And I think if you had a free market, all the people in the crypto space now are telling their friends, don't invest in shitcoins and do your research. And I don't think we'd see another bubble necessarily. Maybe people don't learn their lesson, but I think you can't overprotect everyone. And if we move to all this STO model, all of a sudden we only have the rich guys and accredited
Yeah.
investors being able to get the good early deals, even if the average guy can invest in these projects. I just see it going back to the way it almost was before.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it is a slippery slope if exchanges are willing to bet just making money on something and caring less about the fact that maybe after that exchange offering, their exchange won't be reputable. Just like anything else, though, in the space.
Yeah, and there was an exchange the other day that pulled the plug last minute on one of their
Yep.
IEOs that they were about to do. So it makes you wonder how much vetting they are doing.
Yes, yeah. I mean, other ones like Who Boy, I'd imagine are going to want to try because I believe they're agreed to put Thunder on, and Thunder's a pretty interesting project.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a good one. Looks like we have a question. So, do you consider any cryptos as a safe haven during the market turnovers? In other markets, you would have various safe havens. So I'm wondering if he means like stable coins as far as safe havens.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think like in a stock market downturn, some people view some sectors as safer than
Hmm.
others,
Okay.
like gold or bonds, for example. But I think in crypto, it only really is the stable coins. As you just mentioned before, as much as we love the good projects, they just go down 90% if Bitcoin goes down
Yeah.
70%. And Binance and Maker have probably been the two best performers, maybe Stellar as well up there since this all sort of got really messy and altcoins went down 90%. But even they were down 60 or 70% at their low. So it's pretty frustrating to watch. And I think that shows you how the space needs to mature and recognize that these projects are in individual industries. And just because Bitcoin goes down, it has nothing to do with what another project is doing necessarily. So frustrating, but at the moment, I think it's only really stable coins and the gold and silver backed tokens. There's a few of these other more exciting ones coming out that will have diamonds in the future and a few other, anything that's attached to something in
Sure.
the real world.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree with you there. I mean, as much as I would say probably Tether is not a safe haven, but Maker and Dai are definitely ones that I know that are a little bit more reputable.
There's an Australian project called Synthetics, which started off doing stable coins. So they have like an Aussie dollar, a US dollar, and so on. But lately they've came out with like double leverage, triple leverage Ethereum, inverse Tron. So if you want to bet that Tron's going to go down, they've got all these sort of projects that you can make your own little positions in, I guess is the way to think of it. So that's very cool.
So yeah, I agree with you. Sorry, I got sidetracked. So I can't read. What do you think about the Tether discussions which are going on again? I personally think that most people still don't understand book money.
What do you mean by book money, Phil? So I think Tether, in theory, I think they do have most of the money there, if not all of it. And if they don't have all of it, it's because of the banking issues and banks
Hmm.
freezing their accounts. And you got to remember how hard is it for a business in Australia, to deal with crypto and to deal with a bank? We hear of them getting shut down all the time. They've got 10 different accounts just so they can run their business. Now think of Bitfinex. They've got tens of thousands of customers in different countries they're trying to wire money to and all that sort of thing. It's no wonder they've had a real hard time, I think, dealing with all this. And I think it's the bank's fault. I don't think these rumors of Tether printed 300 million out of thin air, they wouldn't have been able to run that system, as I said before, for 5 years and go through these swings and roundabouts and people taking profits and whatnot without it all collapsing if it was actually a house of cards.
That's a good point. And to be quite honest, I really haven't heard anybody ever make a pro Tether argument. It's mostly always against. But I'd have to say that that is pretty good logic as far as the market fluctuating so much, and obviously people, like you said, taking profits. They have to have at least something in these bank accounts, or else this would have come crashing down quite a while ago.
Yeah, and the frustrating counter argument is, well, why can't they just get audited? And they've said that they can't find an auditing firm to do it, but then others have got firms to do theirs, like the USD stablecoin. So, God, I wish there was more transparency, but there's never a simple answer in crypto.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Never a simple answer.
So Phil's saying the money in your bank account is not cash; it's mostly backed by assets, loans. So that's a really good point that a lot of people don't think about. So if you have Tether and let's say they do have 100 million Tether and $100 million in the bank, because of the way banks work with a fractional reserve system, there's actually not that $100 million
Yeah.
in the bank. They would only, in theory, have $10 million with their fractional reserve. So that is another really interesting point that we think about. But whenever we face the banking system, we're dealing with fractional reserves. So yeah, maybe if people do try to take profits, they try to withdraw a lot of money out of the bank, and the bank says, you can't have all that at once or something. So I prefer decentralized stable coins like Maker and Synthetics.
Yes, that would be That would be concerning. If we go to try to work to a decentralized system, somebody tries to withdraw a lot of Tether, and then Tether can't access their own funds because of the banking system. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, and maybe that's kind of what's happened. Who knows? I want to do some more research, but
Yeah, probably have to look into it as well. See if there's
where to
any more.
find good project information? Well, CryptoCandor and Nuggets News, I guess. But there's so many good crypto channels out there. If you honestly go and search for a review of your project, you should be able to find a good review with someone you like. And I normally look at the likes to dislikes, and you can tell when someone's shilled something pretty quickly.
Yeah, as far as like I do a lot of research, obviously, and off the top of my head, I don't remember the majority of the websites because I actually have them bookmarked on my Brave browser. But I do find that for research reports, Crush Crypto writes up some really awesome like PowerPoints, and they do a lot of research. And oftentimes they are a really good resource for me. So if you're a person that likes to read and not watch, Crush Crypto has their videos, but they also have physical written up like documents too that you can read.
Yeah, and I think reading Reddit, but then reading the opposing Reddit. So whenever something happens, let's say there's an issue with EOS governance, I'll read what's happening on the EOS Reddit, and then I'll read what's happening on the Ethereum Reddit, and you can get both sides of an
Sure.
argument and start to formulate your opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always three sides of the story, right? The individuals, the two sides, and then the truth. So you got to be careful.
Someone's saying I'm looking hella distracted. I'm just checking the comments on my other screen, guys.
Yeah.
I'm not being rude, I promise.
No, I'm trying to multitask too, and it's not working very well for me.
So what are your favorite projects, or do you not want to shill coins?
Well, no, I think my favorite projects are pretty obvious. I mean, Ethereum, I've always said is like my baby coin because that's what I got involved with early on in the space. I'm a big supporter of Horizon, Zen, which was Zen Cash. I love them because of what they're doing as far as decentralizing. Mostly, I like the fact that they're going to have a private platform for publications, so people can. It's a safe, I think, anonymous place to be able to post information for like whistleblowers and things like that.
Yeah.
Basic attention tokens, obviously one of my favorites because I think having control of their ads, having private browsing, and all that stuff is super important. I love Library. That's another one that people I think aren't really paying much attention to, but it's like, have you ever heard of them?
Yeah, so we covered a few of those. Library, Scent is another one, but I think those platforms are awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I really like about them is their team is very receptive. So there's like this one guy that I always talk to. If I run into a problem, I'll send him a screenshot. He'll walk me through it, or I'll help him figure out a bug. And they've been really cool. And I really I'm dying for someone to make a social media platform for content creators that is fair for us and fair for the viewers and less about the person that owns the site, like YouTube. No one I don't think has quite done it yet, but Library for me would be the one that's probably closest to being the most successful.
Yeah, definitely getting there. And as we saw the other day with PewDiePie leaving his streaming platform, I think one by one we'll have these big things come up, and more people will start to use these other platforms. For me personally, I just want to start off by saying I've got like 70% has been my rule in Bitcoin and Ethereum, maybe Litecoin as well, because I just think they're the coins that have just got the biggest communities, the oldest coins, and people don't realize how risky these ICOs and small cap altcoins are. So my rule is normally, let's say 1%, give or take, if you want to invest in one of these. Because if you're in a good project, they normally, like in the boom, they were going up, 10 or 100 fold. So they grow to a big percentage of your portfolio pretty quickly if you're picking the right ones. And if you have a miss, it doesn't really matter if you lose 1% of your portfolio. That's kind of the way I like to think about it. And I own about 30 coins in 30 different industries.
That's good though, breaking things up in different industries. And that's something that I remember when I first got into the space and I was doing research, I didn't understand that there was different projects doing or trying to achieve the same goal. So I was very confused at first. I'm like, I don't get it. Why is there so many projects that are so similar? And then realized, okay, everybody's trying to kind of find the best way about going about doing something. So yeah, I'm not like I don't just strictly buy altcoins, but I prefer, I guess, because of the creativity of them. But I was talking to Crypto Zombie, and he was like, "Oh, I'm happy you're finally doing this." But I mentioned on Twitter that I'm dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin now. So every paycheck, I just have Coinbase taking out money for me because I was always, or taking out Bitcoin for me because I was always forgetting. So now I
Hmm.
feel like now I'm really part of the crypto scene.
Yeah, and I think traders say don't dollar cost average, wait for the bottom to come in and an uptrend to form.
Hmm.
But a lot of people are busy, they work and they're not good at trading. And if they've been dollar cost averaging their altcoins through this crypto winter, all of a sudden they jump 200% in 4 or 5 weeks. And you think, oh, geez, that was the right move for me. So you've got to
Hmm.
work out what's best for you.
That's exactly why I made that decision, because I can't trade. I don't have time to watch charts. I don't have time to always be on top of the news. But I don't want to miss out, and I'd rather have it than not have it. Plus, I honestly picked a great time to start doing it because it was at a low anyways, so I don't feel too bad. But yeah, no, there's arguments for both sides. If you can trade and you're good at it, more power to you. But if you're like me, dollar cost averaging is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I just had our baby, our first son. I think it was nearly 8 weeks ago now, and that really aligns with almost when the bottom is. And I got him a
Hmm.
Bitcoin and put in a ledger to his 18th birthday or whatnot. So it turns out that he's actually never seen a bear market, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's funny. That's a great gift, though. I actually, my brother had a child, and I'm thinking of buying him a ledger and kind of just every holiday, maybe putting, a little bit of Bitcoin into it, and then on his 18th birthday or when he goes to college or whatever, give it to him, and be like, here you go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hopefully, a lot of people get a surprise. And that's one thing that people forget, how many Bitcoins and all cryptos have been lost. Like during the bull market, we were getting people messages saying, I think I've lost all my Power Ledger because I tried
Hmm.
to buy it on Ether Delta and I don't know what I've done. And all those coins are out of circulation forever. And I think it happens more often than we really think about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like the guy who had, I think he was mining Bitcoin on his laptop and he threw it out or something like that, right?
Yeah, and they went and tried to spend millions of dollars finding it in the tip because it was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But yeah.
Yes, that's not that's not a good outcome.
Library. A lot of people talking about library, so definitely check out library, guys. It is a decentralized platform where you can
Mhm.
upload any content.
I just dropped the link in there too. Yeah, a lot of people have moved over there. Lark is over there. I know that Naomi Brockwell is over there. So there's been quite a handful of people that moved. DTube's pretty good too, but I find that I just don't know, or DTube and DLive. But DLive actually has a lot of traffic on that site, which I was pretty surprised by. I used to stream to them directly when I was using OBS and stuff, but now because of my internet problem, I can't. I'm mostly disappointed about not being able to stream directly to them.
So does OBS let you stream to YouTube and D Live at once? Does it?
So what I would do is I would use OBS and this website called Restream, and
Ah, yes,
it
yeah.
would go from like YouTube to Twitter to Twitch and D Live and Facebook. So I was streaming to 5 places at once, which was pretty amazing.
It's the crazy online world we live in, and I think
Yes,
as influencers, even though I kind of hate that word because I think we should be trying to help people, not influence people. But
sure. I hate it too.
I think the world is changing, and you see every day less and less people are watching TV. And as the subscriber number grows, you think about how many crypto YouTubers are out there pushing this message. This has never happened before in history. We didn't have hundreds or thousands of YouTubers saying buy Apple shares or buy Google or Tesla. I
Mhm.
think this really is a phenomenon that we're going to see. The next wave is going to probably surprise people even compared to the last one.
I sure hope so. I remember when Bitcoin hit 20,000, everybody was freaking out, and it's to the point where like my grandmother was asking me if she should invest, and I was like, no, not now. Now is not the time. I'm not a financial advisor, but don't do this now.
Yeah, we did post a message on, I think it was the 13th of December, saying, when everyone's bragging and whatnot, this is generally the time to sell and take some profits. And if you're desperate to get into crypto, dip your toe in the water, but just wait and dollar cost average, because when a chart goes like that, it normally goes down. And there was a painter in our sports team. So do you know what cricket is? That's one of the games
Yeah,
I
I
play
know. I
on.
know of it.
Yeah, so I remember that was my aha moment. There was a guy in our team. He was a painter. He'd never heard of crypto, and he's telling me how much LiveCoin he'd bought at like $500. And I was just like,
Oh,
this is what a bubble looks like, sort of thing. Yeah.
yes, that's painful.
Hmm. Yeah.
Let's see if we got any more questions. I don't think so. I think people. I'm seeing that people want to buy their nieces and nephews and cousins ledgers now with Bitcoin in it. It's a great gift, especially if you're going to do it when they're young.
Someone's saying, "What do you think about 0x?" I love that project. I think there's so many good stuff already being built on top of it. Check out a website called DYDX if you haven't already. They're doing like decentralized derivatives on top of 0x and Ethereum. Yeah.
Very cool. Is 0x, I can't, is that atomic swaps?
It's like it's the platform for all sort of token trading can be done on top
Got
of
it.
it. So yeah.
That's right. I remember that. I think I was going to do a video on it and I ended up getting sidetracked at some point or something.
There's too many coins to cover, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if there's no more questions, we better wrap it up. Any
Yeah.
final thoughts for everyone?
I don't think so. I'm just glad you came on. I feel like, you were writing for the blockchain brief and we were interacting and it was, I'm surprised we'd never streamed before. So I'm glad we finally got that one under our belts.
Yeah, I always love doing collabs, and we tend to have very different audiences as well. So thanks so much for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add before we go?
No, not really, guys. Just thanks for tuning in, and yeah, keep up the good work and supporting us little crypto YouTubers.
Sounds good. Thank you guys. And yeah, I'll see you, I don't know, I guess the next time I make a video.
Yeah, thanks, guys.